Hi guys, as you know, today Netaji's 28 feet single piece granite statue will be unveiled at Kartavya Path, which has recently been changed from Rajpath to Kartavya Path. Rajpath used to be its name because it was earlier called Kingsway, which was named in tribute to King George V, and King George V's statue was there until about 1965, and then out of all among all so many people who could have prevented it, George Fernandez and his men, who were staunch Netaji supporters, they went and demolished the nose of the statue of King George V, and then Congress was forced to remove the statue. So when they questioned Savarkar and his loyalties, remember, this is the lineage of Congress. And a lot of people seem to be having a problem with the name Kartavya Path. They would probably not have a problem if it was called Sarak-e-Farz or Al Kartavya or anything like that. So anyway, a news I recently, not recently, just half an hour ago, I came across this piece of news, and I think some people know this because there are some articles regarding this, but I had absolutely no idea about this. So I'm guessing a lot of people have absolutely no idea about this. So I'm making a video on this, and since I'm not well researched enough on this, so I'll have to read out some articles based on this. On 25th September 1945, about 2,000 soldiers of the INA, Indian National Army, which was Netaji Subhash's army, they were massacred in a prison in a place called Nilganj, which is a village near Kolkata, in a place called Barakpur. And some of them were buried under the ground, and some of their bodies were taken away in trucks, according to eyewitness accounts, a lot of whom are alive even today. So let me give you some information based on the articles. One of them was started by all this research started because of an article by Atish Boshak, a person called Atish Boshak, who is from Bengal. He wrote a post in the Mission Netaji discussion platform Facebook group. And based on that, another more elaborate article was written. From here, I've gathered some informations, and I have just skimmed through, even I haven't read it in full detail. So I'll be reacting to these informations as I go along with you. So Atish Boshak writes, Resurrection of the elusive Nilganj massacre episode. It had all started somewhere in late 70s when I was in middle school. My late dad used to narrate stories of revolutionaries once a while, other than his office work encompassing mumbo-jumbos of the license Raj enacted within the corridors of Udyog Bhavan at New Delhi, his office. I vaguely remember him mentioning the Barakpur word during a tete-a-tete to Jallianwala Bagh episode of 1919. Though he had admitted then of what he had heard could be a rumor due to no mention of its occurrence either anywhere in history books or in national dailies, oh what a surprise, but had added that in case of it really to have taken place would miniaturize the Jallianwala Bagh episode to a whisker. Though this matter remained somewhere in the nook of my mind through these decades, could never muster enough intent to generate opportunity to investigate firsthand. Thankfully, it happened this time as sufficient intent to do had reached the brim. The location was the 1953 Setup Institute on Jute Research, now known as CRIJAF, under the Indian Council of Agricultural Research on the Barakpur-Barasat Road at Nilganj, Barakpur. It was an unplanned impromptu visit, possibly only due to a last-minute office meeting cancellation at Salt Lake Sector 5 on 7th January. Noontime traffic was less than usual on the road due to a bandh called by CPM, oh what a surprise, which helped in covering the 25 odd kilometers in about an hour's time. I picked up a close Delhi family friend, Kaushik, who had moved back to his roots from the outskirts of Barakpur before hightailing to the Jute Institute. Since neither of us had any contacts at the institute, decided to start off with the administration department there. A net search on mobile phone of the institute's website had thrown a few names which were blabbered to the gate security, which ensured a hassle-free entry inside. On meeting, the concerned admin officer, Mr. Singh, was informed that he was transferred there just 5 months ago and had virtually no idea on the history part, but did mention of a brief by his junior on it. Thanks to him and his memory, he could somehow recollect who the person was and got us to see him. Mr. Mishra, in his early 40s, is employed with the institute since the beginning of his career. His father, now retired, was also employed there for 3 decades. He had heard stories from his elders about the existence of the internment camp at the present location and what all had occurred there. When things have to happen, they would surely. He knew of the key people of the local Netaji association who would get together every year to pay homage at the INA memorial situated just outside the institute's boundary wall on the main road. A flurry of phone calls followed. Within the hour, one Mr. Mondol called back confirming availability of the only surviving witness, an 84-year-old retired school teacher who, as an 11-year-old in 1945, had witnessed it all. 2 more witnesses had been lost to old age over the past year. Made haste as it was well past afternoon and reached the given address to come face to face with an aging but fit retired school teacher, Mr. Ghosh. Find herewith his statement. 1. Used to stay close to the boundary fence of the internment camp. How close I had not asked. 2. Heard continuous gunfire which had started late in the night of the 25th September and continued unabated till the early hours of the next day. Had got to know later that the shooting commenced after the INA personnel had retired for the night out in the open. Saw trucks plying laden with dead bodies moving from the internment camp at Nilganj towards Barakpur city and back for more. I did not ask for how long the truck movements had continued. 4. A good initial distance of the road from the camp to Barakpur was soaked in blood which had seeped out from the corpse-laden trucks. Distance from Nilganj camp to Barakpur city is less than 6 kilometers. 5. Later found out that the trucks had proceeded on to the Barakpur cantonment. In 1945, the highest concentration of white British troops in India was based in that cantonment. It is the oldest military cantonment in India, established in 1765. After 1947, the Indian Army had moved in there and a part of it was handed over to the state police for setting up a police training academy. A section of this very large area was also called Lat Bagan or Lot Bagan, I don't know what it is. Lat Bagan, because Lat was the word used for high-level British officers, which continues till today. Lord Canning, who was the Governor General of British India during 1857 mutiny, his wife was buried here. This city is also credited with the onset of the 1857 mutiny by Mangal Pandey's action and subsequent execution. The bodies brought from the camp were buried in a mass grave somewhere in the vastness of the military cantonment, which to this date is pockmarked with dense forests. Since civilian entry was banned back then, no one got to know of the actual burial place. It is also possible that roads and gardens might have come up atop the place over the years. Contrary to whatever little is reported in articles on the internet that the dead bodies were dumped in the Noai Canal, which flows right next to the camp, or in the river Ganga, which is a stone's throw away from Barakpur, Mr. Ghosh vehemently disagrees. He rightly points out that the British desperately wanted to keep the episode confidential, since leak of this scale a massacre with bodies floating up on the water could have led to extreme outrage with further deterioration of an already charged up environment prevalent back then. Resorting to a secret mass burial in their own controlled courtyard, that is cantonment, was the best option. Have you seen Drishyam? There was a small newspaper report of 1945 or 1946 provided by Vandana Garwal sometime back in the MN forum, Mission Netaji forum, on Nehru being apprised of 5 INA personnel shot to death at the Nilganj camp, which Nehru had promised to take up with the British authorities. Well, for just 5 deaths, one need not hear continuous rapid gunfire all night long. It doesn't make sense. It is about time this heinous episode of our real history gets to see the light of the day. Declassify all files on this, which must be gathering dust in some corner of the Indian Defence Ministry archives. From what any layman can also deduce, a couple of thousand INA black category personnel could have been slaughtered that night. The camp held close to 3,000 INA personnel. For people not in the know, black category was designated to ones who were absolute Netaji supporters, and their release was considered extremely dangerous to the British interests of pursuing their stay in India, since they never had any plans to vacate till late in the February of 1946. And that is the time when Gandhiji was holding absolutely no rally. So Gandhiji's contributions to independence is absolutely zero, because until 1946 February, British had no reason or no plans of leaving India, and Gandhiji went around recruiting people for the British Army for the Second World War, and because he thought that, okay, I'm doing this for them, and so maybe they'll be nice to me and leave the country, which was absolutely hilarious. And it was proven because they have themselves said it, and even Congress Core Committee admitted it. Even Vallabhbhai Patel said it, that they have no plans to leave until 46. And then the INA trials began, and that's when the almost the entire country got very pissed off. And that's when British realized, no. Now if we need to stay alive, we need to run the fuck away. Paucity of time did not permit me to do more homework, and okay, then he gives the explanation that he'll do some more research on this. And then another Bengali man working for the CRPF has written a pretty elaborate, well-researched article in a website called My India, My Glory. Let's read what he has written. And he has presented some documents as well. I'll put the links in the description. Not many of us have heard about the Nilganj massacre of 1945 that involved mass genocide of 2,000 plus Azad Hind Fauj soldiers in detention camps by British. One day I suddenly came across an exhaustive Facebook post by Atish Boshak, the one we just read, that also had videos of Sri Shiv Shankar Ghosh, a retired school teacher, who had actually seen dead bodies of Azad Hind Fauj soldiers being carried away in trucks with blood oozing out with his own eyes. This shattered my spirits. I asked Atish Boshak about documentary evidence of the incident so that something can be done, but he had none at that time. I then decided to contact Madhuchanda Kanji, as she was a local in Kolkata. She told me to contact Dr. Jayanto Choudhury. Once I spoke to him, he told me that he had been working on the Jhikorgacha camp. He said he had visited the Nilganj camp, on which now a Jute Research Institute of Government of India named CRIJAF under ICAR Ministry of Agriculture stood. He told me that he had taken photos inside the institute with great difficulty, as the institute people are never keen on letting people probe about its buried history. I asked him whether he has any documents on Nilganj massacre. He had none. He referred to some writings in books, but to move the government to do something in Nilganj, we needed solid government documents on Nilganj. So my hunt for the documents began. I decided to visit the National Archives. On the first day, I entered the archives without any pass, and when I reached the general section, I was asked by the gentleman there to first register. I did. I asked him about documents on Azad Hind Fauj. He told me that they can be found in the private archives on the 3rd floor. I had to again register at PA, and they handed me over a list, hard copy book of 995 or 997 files, and asked me to locate my file on that. I presume that I needed at least 3 to 4 visits to locate the file, if any. I asked them if they had the list electronically. They said that they don't have the list, but they have all the files in scanned form on the computers. Then my real hunt began. I searched with keywords like Nilganj, Nilganj with GU and GANJ, GANG, GUNJ with the difference in spellings. I got none. Yes, I landed on a few files by the above names, but they were useless. For example, one was a file by one Nayak Girwar Singh requesting to return his ₹70, which was confiscated from him when he was incarcerated in Nilganj upon his release. I knew these were useless, but also hilarious that even for 70 rupees a person had to file a petition. That's how you know what's the lineage of running our country. Surfing for months, at last I landed on one letter by one unnamed Major General of Headquarter 303L of G area dated 12/10/1945. Addressed to GS branch to the DMI, Directorate of Military Intelligence in GHQ Delhi, detailing about the incident. In this, he stated that on the intervening night of 25 to 26 September 1945, Captain ERR Menon of 26th 3 Madras Regiment, which was guarding the Nilganj camp, entered the cage of the prisoners of war and ordered them for a roll call at about 2200 hours, which they refused. He then came out, sounded the alarm at QG, quarter guard, and re-entered the cage with a loaded Tommy gun, with his company following him. Bricks and bamboos were thrown at him, and his company men shouted, "Our company commander is finished." After this, as per the British version, the OC Menon said his company men fired, and the company men said that the OC fired, and I believe all of them fired indiscriminately throughout the night to kill all the prisoners of wars there. The residents of the surrounding area, it was then a deserted place, heard gunshots throughout the night. 2 of the witnesses are still alive, and next morning they saw bodies being ferried on in truckloads with blood oozing out of them on the street. They were either buried or dumped in Noai Canal. Some bodies were dug out from below the 7 palm trees in the campus. Copy of the report is attached. I got the whole file xeroxed from National Archives. Interestingly, there was an ordinance promulgated just 3 days before the massacre that any person of or above the rank of captain can use force on any person who refuses to stop being ordered by a sentry or is damaging or intends to damage any property to the extent of causing death. This is according to the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, 1942. The British were definitely not keen on putting up these thousands of prisoners of war kept in detention camps, technically called ECDC, Eastern Command Detention Centers, for trial at Red Fort, just to avoid a tsunami of revolt across the country. Coupled with their restlessness to vacate the camp post the massacre, documents prove this, deserted nature of the area, British domination of press and Indian leaders, all adds up that the British had actually committed a planned genocide of INA prisoners of war and completely suppressed the matter. I decided that something needs to be done immediately. I contacted Rahul Sinha of Zee News and we met at Zee News at Sector 15 Noida. I showed him all the documents. Previously also we had discussed the idea, but he demanded documents. After seeing the documents, he said, "Sir, they say only 5 are dead." I replied, "If you commit a murder of a single person, would you keep document to get caught, or would you destroy all documents? And when this is a planned genocide of more than 2,000 people and the legendary Colonel G.S. Dhillon had written about it in his own diary, what more do you need to do a story?" Reluctantly, he told his reporter at Kolkata to start working on it. She recorded the interview of Dr. Jayanta Chaudhary. I requested her to record the statements of the eyewitnesses who are still living near Nilganj. But she said that she needed a clearance from Rahul Sinha, which he never gave her, and the Zee News reporting on the Nilganj massacre did not happen. Dr. Jayanta Chaudhary told me that he had a file containing names of 1,580 persons killed that night, but he could neither locate the file nor could I have it from him. Then I contacted Shri Bijoy Nag, as in one of the Facebook posts of Joyshri magazine, which he published. It was mentioned that 1,580 people had died. He told me to contact Shri Madhusudan Pal. He told me that in the archives there is one file named Jhikor Gacha, which had names of 1,580 soldiers incarcerated at that time, but not the list of those killed. I knew that I was chasing a mirage. None of these had any definite information on the personnel massacred, so I stopped searching for it. I wrote a detailed letter to the Honorable PM with all the data available with me. I requested him to kindly direct the Institute CRIJAF Nilganj to hold a commemoration function inside the campus. I gave copies to the Agriculture Minister and the Director of CRIJAF. Meanwhile, I had contacted the organization in Nilganj named Netaji Subhash Chandra Mission, which has been tirelessly working since long on this and holding annual functions outside the institute to commemorate the day. I also contacted the local MP and his PA. I told them about the significance of the proposed function. I also told them that I was trying to invite Shri Narendra Singh Tomar, Honorable Minister of Agriculture, to the function. It did not materialize. Shri Supriyo Ranjan Basu, Secretary of the organization, went to the institute along with Arup Ghosh. They met the PA of director. They told him that they are taking action on my letter. He gave me the number of some AAI of CRIJF and told me that he is also a Netaji follower. When I called him up, coincidentally he was in Varanasi. I asked him what action they are taking on the letter. He told me that they are writing to ICAR. The Chief Administrative Officer of the institute told me that such function should be held and that they have written to the ICAR for permission. Pursuing the matter further, I met a concerned bureaucrat at ICAR headquarters at Krishi Bhavan, Delhi. I told him that many Azad Hind Fauj soldiers were from his home state also. Unfazed and holding on to the elan of his bureaucratic indifference, he called for the letter which had arrived from CRIJAF. I glanced upon the letter. It was a simple forwarding letter stating that they had received a self-explanatory proposal from me, which is enclosed for further necessary action. To top it all, they had not enclosed anything with the letter and it was a single piece of paper. I immediately made him talk to the concerned person, who said he will mail the attachments the next day. There was a delay from several ends from the various offices and the proposed function was on 25th September 2019. On 20th September 2019, I decided to go to ICAR myself and I met the concerned official. I learned that the file got caught in red tape and there was a chance of the permission forthcoming before the 25th of September. I had personally met Shri Narendra Singh Tomar, Minister for Agriculture, and appraised him of the complete facts and invited him for the proposed function as chief guest. He expressed his inability to attend as he was busy with Haryana elections, but said he'll get us the required permission. But nothing happened. I knew that the chance to hold the function there had finished. So I told Shri Supriyo Ranjan Babu to hold their usual function and they did hold that on 25th of September 2019, albeit outside the institute. Are we still free of foreign domination? No, because we are still carrying the same system on our heads, against which Netaji revolted and struggled all his life. Persons in power care a fig about our martyrs and their sacrifices. INA trials in Red Fort triggered unrest among Indian soldiers in the British Indian Army. They rose in revolt, ultimately forcing the British to leave India. Colonel G.S. Dhillon was one of the legendary INA officers who were tried in Red Fort by the British. Colonel Dhillon had mentioned about the Nilganj massacre in his diary in his own handwriting. According to him, 2,300 INA soldiers were massacred. Except media reports by Amar Ujala as well as research posts by Atish Boshak and Dr. Jayanta Chaudhuri, there are hardly any information available on Nilganj massacre. It seems the motto of the people is, let nobody be concerned with the thousands reportedly buried under the institute. So what if they came and died to liberate us? Let us enjoy our life while we have it. But these souls are calling us. We have a duty to do. We will not be liberated unless we have paid for their sacrifice. At least a recognition. This is very true. Jallianwala Bagh has received wide recognition worldwide, but this shameful history is still buried. There are many more massacres in India that are still buried. We, the citizens of India, will be waiting for proper recognition being given to the incident and place by the government and thus bestow it with the respect it deserves. In my deliberations during this period, I need to emphasize that Madhuchanda Kanji and Biplab Sarkar of Shiliguri are two persons who are working tirelessly for the cause of Netaji without being armchair activists, pulling out one fig of paper from some old dump and claiming it to be the most relevant one and so on. Apart from research, we also need to work on ground to establish the cause, which may soon be lost. Also, my big salute to Netaji Subhash Chandra Mission, Supriya Ranjan Bose and Arup Ghosh. The word Nilganj had kept repeatedly ringing in my mind. The first time I heard the name was in 2017 February, when I was in Varanasi. It struck to me that to immortalize the deeds of Netaji and Azad Hind Fauj, something tangible was needed, and I immediately reached the conclusion that it could only be a museum of Azad Hind Fauj. Immediately I was writing to the PM requesting him to construct a museum of Azad Hind Fauj in Delhi, so that the heroic deeds and memories of Azad Hind Fauj are frozen in time and doesn't wither away. Tapan Kumar Ghosh of Varanasi asked me to write about the genocides of Azad Hind Fauj soldiers in detention camps at Nilganj and Jhikorgacha. The names were totally unknown to me then. I included them, but comfortably forgot them thereafter. I kept working towards the cause of the museum till 2018 June or so, in which I met Dr. Mahesh Sharma, Minister for Culture, and then Shri Manish Sisodia, DY of CM Delhi. Held several rounds of meetings with Secretary of Archaeology, Delhi Government, and Head of Archaeology, Delhi Government, and ultimately on a proposal from Delhi Government to shift the existing museum of Azad Hind Fauj from Salimgarh Fort to one colonial building near Diwane-Am, Red Fort, Delhi. It was done, and it was inaugurated by PM himself in January 2019. For this 1 and 4 months, I was running around for this museum and entangled in various other intricacies of family. In the meanwhile, I had joined duty at Silchar, Assam and came back because he's in CRPF. I had joined duty at Silchar, Assam and came back to Varanasi and then to Delhi. Here I met Vekho Suoro from Nagaland, and he informed me that he was from the village Ruzaho in Nagaland, and that it was the first village on Indian soil to be administered by Azad Hind government, and that his 99-year-old father, Sri Posui Suoro, was appointed interpreter by Netaji himself, who stayed in the village for 9 days in 1944, and that the village was in shambles and something was needed to be done. So I met Sri Suresh Chavanke, owner of Sudarshan News, whom I knew, and requested him to use his contacts in the government for the upliftment of the village. He immediately said that he'll adopt the village. It was something that I didn't expect. So then it had to be arranged. I visited Ruzaho in December 2018, and on way, I also met my IGP in Shillong, who was then in Guwahati, as I was ordered to meet him to consider my appeal. The formal adoption function took place on 23rd January 2019 at Ruzaho, Nagaland, in which the village was formally adopted by the Sudarshan Rashtra Nirman for its all-round development, which they are yet to start though. I repeatedly liaised with the BSNL bosses at Dimapur to install a mobile tower at the village. PMO had directed DOT on my letter on the matter. Land was ultimately allocated by a villager and survey was done. The thing is at an advanced stage. For the village road, I met Sri Nitin Gadkari, Union Minister for Roads and Surface Transport, the Secretary MORTH and Additional Secretary to MORTH, and then the Joint Secretary of DONER for several times. But that thing is not progressing. I had also written to Sri Azim Premji of Wipro to open a good college at Chozuba or Ruzaho, but sadly got no response from him. All this I did without the help of a single penny from government or private. This person's name is Tamal Shannal, who works for the CRPF. He is a history enthusiast as well. So this is all we know about the Nilganj massacre for now. And remember that the statue is coming up tomorrow. This is not the end of the demands. This is just the start. This is our latest demand. And the INA memorial needs to come up near the India Gate, or at the place of the India Gate, or at least beside the India Gate. And it has to be higher than the India Gate because it was a British monument.